Call the August meeting, school board meeting of the Colonial School Board of Education to order. Our pledge this evening will be led by Mr. Richard Schiller.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. First we have Dr. Mentor.
Yeah, before we get to the meat of the meeting, for lack of a better word, we have a special performance for us today, just to kind of let the board see that we continue to work with students throughout the summer and provide them opportunities to excel in all areas. I know typically athletics and some of the camp activities get a lot of attention, but tonight we want to showcase some of our performing students and the work that they've been doing. So we have a little bit of a virtual clip here we'd like to share with you.
ready, go.
So special thanks to those names that just went scrolling by you on the screen there very quickly. Just for the record, that was John Sokonich, Christina Cento, Margaret Murray, Fred and Jackie Higgins, Cara Valeni, Deanna Perry, and Jason Keller, for their instructors. They provided lessons, music lessons for up to almost 70 students during the summer. Kudos to them and their families for taking advantage of that opportunity and providing that opportunity. Likewise, special shout out to our, in the beginning of the summer, we hired an extended learning opportunity supervisor, Jess Hitchens, who came in, hit the ground running, and successfully pulled off summer programming for over 1,000 students with the hard work of our staff, commitment of whether it's nutrition services, custodial, bus transportation, and the teachers and the counselors and the staff working in those programs. It was a resounding success for the summer. So just thought we'd share that quick highlight before we started the week.
Thank you very much. Okay, first order of business we have, is there any additions and or corrections to the board agenda? One item we have is we will remove item 6D, termination of employee from the consent or from the agenda. That is to be removed. Is there any other additions and or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as corrected?
Make a motion.
Okay, Chris. Chris, go ahead.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
It's just the agenda.
The agenda.
Just the agenda.
I'm sorry, just the agenda.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's made by Mr. Pichu. Mr. Schiller seconds the motion. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The agenda is approved. Next order of business we have is the consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of board meeting minutes from past meetings, education items such as EPER, choice invites, Personnel moves.
Make the motion, Mr. President.
Business moves. Approval of bids, financial position reports, and monthly variance report. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Make a motion, Mr. President, to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved by Mr. McGee, second by Mr. Crossan to approve the consent agenda as presented. Questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion is carried unanimously. Mr. Handy?
Yes, I request that Ms. Falcon explain financial consequences of not awarding the Wellness Center contract to the Moore.
The total, yes, sir. The total bid for the Nemours bid was $2.5 million over 3 years. The total for the Life Health Center was $7.3 million over 3 years. The cost difference of that is $4.8 million over 3 years.
Thank you very much. Interesting. Okay, thank you. Updates and action items is the next order of business. School year preparations. Dr. Menzer.
So I struggle to bring myself to say these words, but we were right back at it. For what seemed like we were gonna start the summer and start getting ready for a school year that was COVID relatively free. We find ourselves right back into that conversation pretty quickly over the last couple of weeks. So I thought I would give the board a very high level overview of how we're moving forward with our planning and our communication plan with our staff and our families. First off, we were ready to release some information today, but given the announcement that was made today from the state via the governor regarding masks required in schools K through 12, we paused and are deciding that we're going to look at that language from that recommendation and look at the language in those guidance, and make sure that the protocols that we spent the last 4 months working on, or 4 weeks and couple months working on, are reflected in the guidance so that it's accurate. We can do a one-time release and we're not hitting parents and the staff up with a bazillion different corrections and changes. We feel confident that we will be ready to put out information on Thursday to the staff first in the mid-morning, early afternoon. And then the plan is to share relevant information with families Thursday afternoon, some of the higher level stuff that I'm going to talk about now. And then next week, start sharing some of the finer grain information that the principals and the schools are going to be working on and sharing with the families as we get closer to the start of school year. We're trying to avoid the fire hose method of sharing information, which is funneling it all at everybody at one time and just kind of like knocking everybody out. Especially on the heels of today's announcement, you know that there's going to be a lot of conversations around that, and we want to make sure that when our message goes out, it's heard and it's relevant to the audience. So what I can tell you, some just real high-level summaries. I'm not going to get into the specifics because again, we're still going to look at them in light of the new mask requirements. So obviously the mask mandate came down and it's going to be in effect on August 16th. To be clear, we never left the mask mandate for summer programs. Our students and staff wore masks all summer long. We did not pull back on that during the summer, but we will now pick that up on August 16th, as well as this applies to any visitors and employees that are in state buildings. So we're going back and revisiting our protocols to make sure that they align with that language, and then we'll move forward from there. Transportation is an easy one. That's never wavered. If you're riding on a bus, you must wear a mask. I can tell you that our goal is that we will be having only 2 students per seat when possible. That's going to be that's what we're striving to do with all of our bus runs. In classrooms, it's going to be desks 3 feet apart and up, facing the same direction, probably with a seating chart. Those are some of the fundamentally simple ones to kind of put out there. There's a couple other nuances to that play out more in the type of the classroom it is in the school and their programming. Change of classes, we will have students moving about the hallways and changing classes. for core courses, exploratory, or going to small group. Each school is going to be working through the logistics of how that plays out. We will continue to run shared space activities such as exploratory or RTI groups. Students will be pulled for therapy, for OT, for occupational therapy, physical therapy, or speech language therapy. Contingent in a lot of these spaces, when they get there, there will be seating charts. So there will be required seating in all these locations to the best of our ability as we move up into grade levels. The high school and the middle school will obviously have different approaches to that than they would in the elementary level where they move less, but there's still a need for a seating chart. Cafeterias, students will be eating in the cafeterias. We are working through several different models at each building, but generally speaking, students will be about 2.5 feet apart, sitting diagonally at tables. We feel that, if I'm not mistaken, the last count was 10 per table, Dr. Lida, that we were looking at in that model, and that was allowing us to serve lunches during a general lunchtime, but each school possibly having some classrooms that might eat lunch in their room, depending on the numbers in the cafeteria. So it's still being worked out. Recess is weather contingent. Students are going to go outdoors, and we plan on using recess as best we can this year, and there's no mask required when they're outdoors. They will be required, students, we believe, we're going to be requiring them to sanitize their hands when they come back into the building. Illnesses in schools, we are going to continue to have our CARES classrooms monitored by a CNA, and we are going to continue to stress that students, the COVID protocols that were in place prior to this school year last year in terms of students coming to school sick, and they should not be coming to school sick. Parents should be contacting their nurse to talk about the symptoms. Cleaning, we are going to align with the CDC guidelines, where it's really going to be cleaning once a day as normal, but teachers will also have cleaning supplies in their rooms to address any issues. Those are the ones that we feel are like the ones that people are always asking about first, kind of get those out. We're looking at those being finalized and tweaked with maybe a little bit more meat on the bones in an email to staff first on Thursday, with a communication to families, also with probably a one-pager for families as well, that kind of hits some of the higher level things, so they're not sifting through. I just kind of scrolled through 10 PowerPoint slides that are being drafted out. That will be shared also, but kind of get a one-pager out. I'd ask Ms. Fleetwood and Dr. Lida if there's anything to add from our multitude of discussions that you want to bring forward at the time you've been at the table at a lot of these discussions.
No.
Not at this time, but then you covered everything. Thank you.
Wow. How about that, Mr. Wallace?
For the moment. For the moment.
Let me ask Emily.
All of it as of now.
Okay, any questions from the board?
Athletic contests, those type of things are still.
Everything is, we are going to follow DIA guidance. We plan on following whatever guidance DIA puts.
Yeah, but that, we have a meeting on that on Thursday.
Correct.
Not sure if I'll be at that meeting, but there's going to be something coming out that.
Yeah, we don't know. We
I
have not heard
of
anything.
anything.
We haven't heard anything.
But it would have anything as well. Okay. All right, next order of business is board policy manual.
Yes, in front of the board for a first read is a policy that the board will adopt that allows board members to participate and attend meetings virtually, as well as the public to attend meetings virtually. This has been talked about since the spring. I think you all brought it back to us from DSBA that it's coming. The board agreed with DSBA, thinking that it was a good idea. So this policy was a boilerplate policy drafted by legal counsel and given to DSBA and shared with all the districts for you to put into our policy that we can do that. Or our policy, even though it is already a state regulation, it's a state law that's out there.
Yes, it's good. It's a proactive move that will foster more participation by the public, as well as if one of our board members happens to be ill or is not able to make it in person, they can still join in and join our meetings virtually.
And the one thing I will say, Mr. Laws,
And you can still vote?
they can still vote.
Yes.
They're an active member. The only difference around this is there needs to be an anchor location. So for example, this evening, I'm going to use tonight as an example, we're following the regulations. We have an anchor location. There are seats for the public. We actually have a member of the public. That is part of the process, but we also are allowing the community, they're in virtually. We have several panelists. We are panelists. We have several attendees, and we also have public comment that's going to be made in the virtual space. So it's going to be a little bit of growing pains as we move to William Penn next month, but I think we'll be ready for it. I know the William Penn staff are excited to have us. But William Penn, as you said last month, was going to be our permanent anchor location for this school year.
Correct.
So I just want to put that out there, that's the key word, is this anchor location.
If that's the plan, is for the high school to be that permanent location. But as always, we, from time to time, there may be a reason why we may need to change that due to some type of emergency or facilities issue or something like that. So
And we will
would be
do
one of
that
the
within
times.
the day's notice to change the location of the board.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Next order of business we have is, this is it.
The field trip.
Yes, the field trip report that I have is, pull that up.
Sure, it's, there's a class of 2024 at William Penn is seeking to travel abroad for an environmental science and sustainability trip to Costa Rica in the spring 2024. So we typically, these trips garner board's approval before the chaperones and the group will start engaging in a contract or conversation with a vendor and start soliciting families. They won't do that until the board is going to approve foreign travel, which you've done this before. This is an ambitious ask at this time. I don't know, it's board's prerogative.
3 years.
Yeah.
2.5 years.
2.5.
Do I hear a motion from a member of the board?
Make a motion that we approve the extracurricular field trip for the class of 2024 to Costa Rica.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Kennedy, second by Mr. Handy to approve the field trip for the class of 2024 to Costa Rica. Questions? What happens if for some unknown reason we still have the situation that we have today? Are the funds refundable to the students?
That's for the teacher and the coordinator to engage in a conversation with the vendor. I would imagine. But I can find the answer out for you from, I believe it's Mr. Duty who put in for that trip. I'll double check that. You can find out.
Yeah, that would be a question. The other questions? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Field trip is approved.
So it's with great honor, Mr. Laws, that I tell you that the next 4 agenda items will be Ms. Falcon, the Chief Financial Officer, doing a series of presentations.
First will be the preliminary budget.
Yes, sir.
Okay, how about it?
We could have the screen shared with the preliminary budget presentation. Okay, so we move to the next slide. This does represent our preliminary plan for the 21-22 school year. I will present another final budget for you after certification of the unit count. Usually that happens in November or December. This year's budget assumes that we are going to be funded at 98% of our estimated unit count from last spring due to the enrollment uncertainty coming out of COVID. So that does constitute a decrease from where we were last year. This was reviewed by our Financial Oversight Committee last Tuesday on August 3rd. We could go to the next slide. So looking at state revenues, we are showing that there was an overall increase from last year. That is in large part due to an increase in the opportunity funding. There's a 3-year phase-in from the funding lawsuit that the ACLU brought forward. So that is increasing funds. However, there was volatility. The Student Success Block Grant now only contains 1 portion. It was 2 portions last year. It was K-3 special education funding as well as K-4 reading funding. The K-3 special education funding has actually been converted through legislation into part of the unit count formula. And that is also being phased in over a couple of years. So those K-3 special education funds are no longer part of that block grant, which is causing that to be lower. The transportation formula also did contain some enhancements. It's now recognizing double and triple runs, which will help our funding situation with transportation. And we also reflects the awarding of a residency grant that we received, which is why the other state revenue amount is a little bit higher. So overall, it's a 4.2% increase in state revenue over where we were last year. From local revenues, if we could go to the next slide, our discretionary revenue is down slightly because of a lower projection around interest earnings. We actually didn't receive any interest for the last several months of FY21 due to the low interest rates across the state, and the treasurer's office wasn't able to pass anything along to us. We also are seeing, we do expect that there is going to be an increase for the cafeteria receipts because, we are expecting we're going to be able to serve some more meals this year. And there was also an increase to the match tax. So that is showing as well. Choice and charter billing, I'm estimating that those are remaining largely the same. So with all of that into consideration, we're looking at total revenue being down by 1.1%. But part of that is due to the fact that, I am anticipating that we're going to be able to put more money into our reserve accounts than we did last year. If we go to the next slide with our federal revenues, federal revenues for our entitlement grants are down by 2.2%. The other federal revenue, as is mentioned here, is the 21st Century Grant that we've been receiving. So our CARES funding, which was the first round of COVID relief funds that we received in the spring, we've pretty much fully spent that out in FY21. So that funding is not reflected as part of the budget. And the ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funding, as we're calling it, for the pandemic relief, I'm showing those in a separate section of the budget to provide continuity and make sure that year over year, when those funds expire, it doesn't look like there's a large swing in budget growth and then budget decline. So I'm carving those off as a separate portion. There will still be expenditures reported and you'll still have that transparency. It's just not going to be embedded in the overall budget numbers. So total revenue overall is up by 2% over FY21. But again, most of those increases are in restricted funding lines. Our discretionary resources being offered through the state continue to be stagnant. We go to the next slide and start looking at expenditures. Given the uncertainty with enrollment and not being sure about how that's going to rebound, we are continuing to take a cautious approach in how we've set up the FY22 budget. I have set most discretionary budgets at 95% of FY21 amounts to give us the flexibility to make decisions as those final unit numbers and enrollment numbers come in. As always, restricted budgets were adjusted. So if we're getting more revenue in one area, then the expenditure amount goes up accordingly. I did make the exception, as noted, with technology. That continues to be an area where we have pretty high demand for additional services, additional needs. So that is being increased. And we've also established new budget lines for our virtual programs. Grades 1 through 8 is being handled by Wilmington Manor, and the high school has set aside for virtual programming as well. And we've also collapsed a couple of our budgets. The superintendents are no longer going to have individual budget lines. They will basically use one source of funds for administrative ease and just streamlining things. If we go to the next slide, we've done a similar streamlining among our tuition budgets. We've eliminated some of the discrete buckets to give principals more flexibility in meeting the needs of students across programs. All of the revenue here comes from our tuition resources. So there really isn't requirement that we segregated into programming or special program budgets. So we've done that collapsing to make sure that the principals, again, have that flexibility. It is not intended to be a cut in resources by any stretch. And the payroll budgets have been collapsed for similar reasons. We still have detail on what schools all of our staff are assigned to through other means. And the discrete payroll budgets were an administrative headache to keep up with. So we've collapsed those to streamline our processes. The opposite is for immersion. Splitting those out is actually going to ease the administrative tracking of those funds. So there's 2 separate lines now. And overall expenditures have increased by 1.2%, mainly due to the expected growth in salary and the opportunity fund increases that I mentioned earlier. Some of the other information included in the budget is an overview of our expected property tax receipts and details on our ESSER 2 funds, which were applied for and received earlier in the spring. Our ESSER 3 funds are still being finalized. The allocation amount is included in there, but the details are still pending. So I will be reporting that to you at a later point in time when that has been finalized. And additionally, one-time enhancements for our 2 IDEA grants. There was a one-time bump in those funding amounts. Those details will also be provided at a later date when those budget plans are finalized. So in summary, we could bump to the next slide. Actually, one more slide ahead for the summary. So this budget still definitely reflects the changing landscape. There is still a lot of uncertainty about how our student population is going to look this coming year. While state funds haven't declined, this wealth of federal resources has allowed us to meet a lot of these challenges, but we do need to watch for the fiscal cliff that when this $30 million grant under ESSER 3 expires in FY24. We do need to make sure that we've positioned ourselves well so that we don't have to make cuts at that point in time to programming or staff. So we are trying to thoughtfully utilize all this money in a one-time way so that we can really maximize what we're doing for our students and sustain it into the future when the funds expire. And I would be happy to entertain any questions at this time.
Any questions for Ms. Falcon?
I do.
That's good.
Ms. Falcon, so in regards to the E3 grant, I know you and I have discussed this previously. It looks like it's showing, I think, almost 535 in 535,000 an amount that we didn't receive from them as projected. And then I see that our payout in expenditures is 515. Are we seeing a relation? Is that held back because we're not receiving it still? And do you see that changing in the future? Is it just due to COVID, or how's the relationship as far as receiving that grant money in the future?
There have been some hiccups and some challenges and delays in the reimbursement schedule that we've seen with the E3 grant. We have a fantastic relationship with the organization that we're working with for the programming partnership. I think they've experienced some challenges internally with their financial offices. And I think that's what's driving a lot of it. But we are in close contact. Dr. Lida is actually, probably in meetings with them, 2 or 3 times a week. So I have no concerns about receiving the full amount of funding that we're due by the end of the grant. There was a bit of a lag in FY21 when we closed out that amount, but no reason for any concern as the grant closes out.
And just to follow up because as far as the interest payments for us, obviously, I don't know if we're going to see an increase anytime soon as far as our interest rates. Are we adjusting our numbers for this upcoming year to kind of compensate for that, where it might be another year before they decide to change anything there?
Yes, I think I took the expected interest revenue down by almost half. I don't have the number right in front of me, but so I've definitely accounted for that. Unfortunately, we don't have any other options other than what the treasurer's office, makes available to us. And from what I understand, they're, they are being as aggressive as they can because they're managing the entire portfolio of state resources, not just school district money. So, yeah, it was a 60% cut actually to the interest revenue expected this year. So it is accounted for, thankfully it's not a gigantic amount of money. So, we are, I think, going to be able to weather that, but we haven't gotten much information in terms of when we can expect that to turn around.
Other questions for Ms. Falcon? Kennedy, anything?
Yeah, I'm good.
Rick? No. Robin? Rob, do you have a question?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. Mr. McGee, anything?
No, sir.
Ronald?
No.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Okay, with that preliminary budget report, do I hear a motion for action upon the preliminary budget for the school year 2021, 2022?
Make a motion, Mr. President, to accept the preliminary budget for 2021-2022 school year.
We have a second?
Second.
Moved by Mr. McGee, second by Mr. Cross, to approve the preliminary report presented by Ms. Falcon. Questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Okay. These are three.
So this is basically just to provide a quick update on where we are in the process. As I mentioned in the last presentation, we are in the final stages of putting our plans together for the ESSER 3 grant. There was over $30 million allocated to us as part of the American Rescue Plan that was passed by Congress several months ago. 20% of that, or roughly $6.1 million, must be spent on addressing learning loss throughout the district. And we are, right now estimated to go well over that in making those budget allocations. But we are, as I said, trying to put together a thoughtful plan to minimize the out-year costs and the sustained costs that have to continue after the grant funds expire. The deadline we have for submitting this to the department is August 23rd. And we plan to meet that deadline. We are waiting for the schools. All of our school buildings have student success plans that they're putting together. And there was they had the ability to put forward any budget requests related to their student success plans, which we will incorporate into our ESSER 3 funding request that goes down to DOE later this month. Those were, I believe, due on the 17th. So coming up, or the 18th. Well, the grant's due on the 23rd, but
Oh, for us, yeah.
Yeah, the internal deadline.
the
is
internal
a little
deadline
bit
was
more ahead of
the
that.
17th, I believe.
Yeah, sorry. And the 30 million is for the district. I would say.
That is correct. Yes, so as we finalize those plans, we will absolutely bring that information forward to you. If not in September, then certainly at a future meeting, and report that out. And it will be, obviously, the spending details will be incorporated into my budget reporting that the board receives monthly.
Part of the requirements of these funds is also that it's made, it's shared publicly, so there will be.
It will be
you
on the
know,
website, as all of our financial information is.
As Ms. Falcon likes to remind me, it's all there.
Yeah.
These are two spending modifications. Ms. Falcon?
Yes, so this item relates back to the ESSER 2 funding that I mentioned was applied for in the late spring, and we've received approval for. Part of that funding included facility enhancements, and the state worked with the districts over the last couple of months to develop a major capital improvement waiver process. So we have a couple projects in that spending plan that are above the major cap threshold of $750,000. The waiver that's in front of you for approval basically acknowledges that we are over those thresholds. It gets down, once you approve it, it will go to the state Secretary of Education, Director of Management and Budget, Office of Management and Budget, and the Controller General for sign off. And this will basically allow us to move forward with these projects outside of the normal major capital improvement process, which is that is the process that we're being asked to follow by the state.
That being said, do I have a motion for consideration and action upon the Easter construction waiver for the HVAC system at Sutton?
So move.
There's a second?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Handy, seconded by Mr. McGee. To approve the action upon the waiver. Questions from Ms. Falcon? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Certificate of necessity.
The final item that I have for you this evening is the submission of the certificate of necessity request for the John G. Leach School. This will go down to the Department of Education for consideration in the FY23 bond bill for the state. It's the exact same request that we presented to you last year, the same parcel of land, the same school design. We have put together a little bit more of an aggressive ask for the Leach community. You know, we really feel like we are putting, you know, we've invited Secretary Bunting to tour the facility in September. And, you know, we are doing everything we can to make a super strong case that, you know, the Leach community needs a new facility to ensure that it has the strongest programming possible for those students. So the request in front of you, again, is the same as last year. The timeframe consideration of note is that the contract we have on the parcel of land with Newcastle County expires December of 31, or at the end of this December. So if the CN is not approved this year, then we will be back to square one with the parcel and trying to find somewhere to build a new school and move forward with the project at that point. So
When would legislature or the appropriate people act upon the certificate of need?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
When will they act upon it?
So the process is that we have to submit the request to the department by the end of the month, end of August. The Department of Ed makes recommendations or issues certificates of necessity as part of the 23 budget process. That usually happens in October, and the districts are notified in either late October or early November.
Yeah.
Yes.
So one other significant thing of note is our letter, the cover letter is the only thing that actually has any significant changes to it. We've more emphatically made our case with stating the need as well as the land going to fall out of favor with us at the end of this calendar year. And so we will be taking a little bit more of an aggressive approach with attempting to express these concerns with the folks that you just inquired about. So just know that as that unfolds, once we submit and as we begin to move forward with this, you may hear about Leach, and it's because folks are reaching out and expressing their desire for this CN's approval.
Okay, do I have your motion to approve consideration and action upon the certificate of necessity process?
So moved.
Here a second.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Cross, second by Mr. McGee to approve the consideration and action upon the certificate of necessity for Leach School. Questions?
I have a comment. I want to correct something Ms. Falcon said. This is actually the third submission.
Third.
Yeah. She said this is like the one last time, the second. This is the third time we're submitting. I just want to clarify that for the record.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion is carried.
Thank you.
Delaware School Board Association update. Any updates from either the legal?
No.
No. How about the PSBA board?
No.
Okay. Items removed from the consent agenda? None. Items added to the agenda? None. The next order of business we have is public comment. I will ask all of our people who have signed up for the public comment to please be patient with us here. This is the first time we're doing this virtually. But I will remind you, for anyone desiring to publicly speak, you need to please fill out the form. Turn it in. I just got 2 or 3 here, okay? On the day of the meeting, please fill out the form in its entirety, making sure that you include your Zoom user name. All rules for public comment will still apply, and a maximum of 3 minutes will still be allotted. You will be called upon when it's your turn to speak. Okay, again, there's laws protecting the privacy of the employees and students, prohibit board members from engaging in a discussion of any employee's performance or qualification or confidential matters relating to a student. If a board member violates such statutory rights to privacy, such a board member may be exposed to individual liability. Concerns regarding individuals will not be discussed in the open forum. If you have a personal issue regarding your child or children, we will help you set up an appointment with the appropriate person to address your needs. Okay? Okay. So our first person is Miss Serenity Tucker. Serenity, you here?
So we'll have to, Mark Rowe will have to bring her in as a panelist so she can come forward. They see her in the audience. I think I see a Serenity Tucker on the participant list. So Mark, if you are able to tag her as a panelist and bring her forward so we can give her time.
Ms. Tucker, you there?
Hang on, let me go check with Mark.
All patience.
They need to accept. It's
Oh.
a new Susan.
Ms. Tucker, if you're there, you may have received a message to accept. Actually, she's not there anymore. Okay, we'll move on. Maybe there's a technical glitch.
Okay, we'll come back to her.
So let's just clarify for the record, if you're asking to speak publicly, you're going to be made a panelist and you have to accept to be a panelist, and then you will be brought into the meeting and you'll be on the screen. So we're going to call their names and they'll be made panelists to come forward. Okay, Mr. Ross.
Okay, next person we have is Jamie Reed. Jamie, are you there? We see you, now we don't hear you. You have to unmute yourself, Jamie. There you go.
Hello, do you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. So my question is concerning, you guys answered the mask questions I had at the beginning. I mean, at this point, from everything that I've read, the cloth masks that the students wear don't do anything, especially if they're sitting in the same room the entire day. So I at least appreciate that they're not having to wear them outside, but I can tell you from personal experience that this really discourages kids from wanting to come to school, especially if they have a teacher that they don't like. So I don't know if you guys have any connections to speak to Carney or whatever, but to voice the concerns for the kids on their behalf, because it's really discouraging on top of them going through transitions in middle school and then in the high school, having to wear that stuff on their mask all day or on their face all day. My other main concern is when it comes to the vaccines, what is the potential plan moving forward with that? Because Pfizer is wanting to try and get EUA approval for kids 5 to 11 by the middle of September. I see that you guys are promoting it, and according to CDC statistics, there are actually more kids harmed by this vaccine in the 12 to 15 age group than there have been that have died from COVID since January of 2020. There are 397 confirmed cases of myocarditis in these young kids that are now their lives are completely in disrepair the rest of their life. So I don't find it fair that a lot of parents take guidance from the school where you guys are promoting a vaccine with no additional information. And I know that when these parents take their kids to get this vaccine, they are not getting the proper information. So I would like to know if you guys are planning on mandating it, even if it's under EAU, or if you are doing something to make sure that parents are fully disclosed and aware of how this can damage their child's future.
Okay. Is that your questions, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to have someone call you and go over some of these questions with you and provide you some more information?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. And I really just wanted to voice it today because I know that there's a lot of parents out there that might not have or know how to get access to this information. I wanted to at least help some parents, if they're listening, to maybe do a little bit of extra research instead before they take their kid down to get the vaccine. So, but yeah, if an additional call is needed in private, that's, I'm more than welcome.
And
Yeah.
we can't answer specific questions during this forum, but I'll ask Dr. Cooper to please reach out and have a discussion with you and hopefully get you some more answers. Okay?
Okay. All right. I filled in the information when I did the form for this meeting. Do you take that information there?
We have it. We'll
Okay.
make sure he gets it. All right?
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate your comments and questions.
Yep.
Okay. Ms. Tucker, are you back?
See if Mark's able to get her. Again, Ms. Tucker, you'll need to accept to be a panelist, and then you'll be brought in to the meeting. So Mark, if we can find Serenity Tucker on the attendee list and make her a panelist. All right, let's try.
We'll try the next one. Beth Carroll, are you available?
She's That's not in attendance.
Okay, we're going to move on from Ms. Carroll.
So I will, just for the record, I will have Dr. Cooper reach out to Beth Carroll. Her comment in here is related to the masks as well. So I will follow up with her, Dr. Cooper, even though she's not speaking this evening.
Okay. Okay, the next individual we have asking to speak to the school board is Valencia Lowe. Valencia?
Here she comes.
Valencia, we see you need to unmute yourself.
There we go. Hi, good evening. So I wanted to address the Life Center and replacing that with another resource. And I feel like the Life Center Wellness Program has been such a lifesaver to my family and my child because it really helped me navigate certain conversations. And you've had so much progress with it. I mean, the district itself has done remarkable work with this resource. And I'm just trying to understand what is the reason for the change now. In the minority community, there is a stigma in therapy. And so having relatable resources to speak to our children, as well as ourselves that already have some idea of our background, is really more effective. And I feel like, especially since we're still in COVID, bringing in a new resource, there was already, some hesitancy to even speak with anyone. So I just ask and urge every board member to really think about this in terms of changing a resource that our kids have now confided in over the past 18 months during COVID, just for a price tag. And then for someone to actually send me the RFP that says that Life Center wanted a $7.5 million payment over the next 3 years, because I find it very hard to believe that we could not negotiate this and just maybe go back to them and say, hey, we have this from the Moors. Can you match this or not? But it is really not effective to change a therapy resource, a wellness resource for our children or our parents in the midst of this pandemic.
right, any other questions?
No other questions, but I really pose, I need to understand why that came about. Like, what was the initiative behind even visiting this change?
Okay, well, we're going to ask Dr. Cooper, he's going to be a busy man here the next couple of days. We're going to ask him to reach out to you as well and give you some explanation on some of the topics that were there. And I'm not sure if you've been part of the meeting for the entire evening or whatnot, but there were some facts and figures that were given out as part of the state statute bidding process that we proceeded through. So some of that information would be available underneath of the FOIA process for your information.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
So I'll be able to get that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Okay, our next person that we have is Miss Pam Lane, who happens to be in attendance here with us this evening. Ms. Lane?
If you want to come up to the corner, right to the left of Betsy, so the mic will pick you up, Miss Lee. Oh, no, right at the corner. Oh, okay, you're good.
All right, good.
All right, hello. I guess seeing how everything's been playing out, I guess I might not get an answer, but I do want to just publicly ask the question. I do know that Pete, you said you're going to get with me later, to discuss these things, but I was made aware that the 8th grade honors program, like especially the math program, is possibly being removed from the school year this year, not allowing the honors 8th grade math students to take IM1 in 8th grade. And I was just, it's concerning to me. So I was just wondering why you guys were deciding this. And I just wanted to kind of go on the record and let you guys know that this is disturbing to me as a stakeholder. It doesn't affect my kids personally because they've already gone through this, but all 4 of my kids have been a beneficiary of being in the honors program all through their middle school years, and especially taking IM1 in 8th grade. It helped them, take accelerated math courses and show rigor when they were applying to colleges because they were able to take other math courses.
Okay. Again, Dr. Lyons will reach out to you to have a discussion. Thank you very much. Okay, the next individual we have is Representative Minor Brown. Representative Minor Brown, are you available?
Here she comes, I believe. Yep.
There we go. There you go. Okay, we see that. Just have to unmute yourself, please.
There you go. All right.
Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, my colleagues and I have received a ton of feedback, emails, concerns, phone calls from families in reference to the proposed change from Life Health Center to Nemours. So we did join this call, even though we were left we weren't elevated to panelists, unfortunately, but we joined to hear the parents' concerns first. But I do want to say, Dr. Menzer and Emily, thank you for taking the time to meet with myself and my colleagues yesterday in reference to the concerns that have been put out there. We saw that there was a petition put out there as well. And I also want to thank the Colonial families that are listening in and the ones that did voice public comment for voicing their concerns, because this is a very sensitive topic. Behavioral health alone is a very sensitive topic. And as a district, it is imperative that you take into consideration the concerns of the families because they know what's best for their children. I know we all want the best for this district. And unfortunately, we don't know what's best for this community, but the community knows what's best for the community. And that's what we're seeing. That's why families are reaching out. Families have, and the children have created a trusting relationship with Life Health providers. And the family's fear of disturbing that is extremely valid. Life Health has shown via the 6 years of data, and we all know that data does not lie, that they are capable of providing quality services to Colonial families, Colonial children. And once again, data doesn't lie. Unfortunately, Nemours has not had the opportunity to show that to these families. I do ask that we continue to work together and be an advocate for our little people because they are our future. And all of us, elected officials, you as a board, superintendent, Emily, everybody has an obligation.
1 minute remaining, Ms. Brown.
To those little people. Oh, that's unfortunate as the state rep that I have 1 minute remaining. That's the first time this has ever happened. But if I have 1 minute, then I will ask this question and I hope you do respond to it. I did talk to Life Health and I did review their RFP. And Emily, you did mention that they requested 7 million over 3 years, but I'm looking at their RFP right now and it doesn't say that. It actually says the amount that you said Nemours requested. So could you clarify that number for me, please?
You don't have.
Yeah, we'll get that information together and we'll reach out to you shortly with that.
Okay, now is it hard for you to just respond to me now? Do you have it in front of you? Why do we have to wait? Because she just said it earlier. She said the number earlier on the board
This
meeting.
is public comment section and as I said, we'll have someone reach out to you and talk to you about the facts and figures on this.
All right, because let's say parents are trusting you with their children. So in order for us to trust you with our children, you have to be honest.
Okay, time is up. Thank you very much for your comments and questions. And as I said, we'll have someone reach out to you and get you the information that you're requesting. All right. Thank you. Okay, our next individual is Mr. Granville Brown. Mr. Brown, are you available?
Oh, hold on. They just. Mark. I don't know, something just happened on the screen. I can't see if he's here. Mark, I'm no longer the host. I can't see if anybody's here. Granville Brown stepped off. According to, I just got a text that Granville Brown was in attendance and he stepped off.
Yeah, stepped off. Okay.
So I can have, his concern was how is changing event going to affect relationships that were fostered with these children who are already dealing with trauma and had trust issues. It's a wellness RFP question. I will pass this along to Dr. Cooper.
Okay.
For follow-up.
All right. And you'll have Dr. Cooper or yourself will talk to Representative Brown.
I think it's going to be a more of a dollars and cents question related to probably what Ron asked Emily to share. So I'll probably ask Emily to reach out to her first to explain the numbers, the way they look.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. The only other one that we'll try one more time is
Serenity Tucker.
Serenity, Ms. Tucker, are you there?
She's in attendance. I can see her name. So if she gets an invite to be asked to be a panelist, Ms. Tucker, please accept to be a panelist. We have her contact information here. Oh, wait, let's see if this, no. Didn't come through.
Well, Ms. Tucker's question surrounds the Wellness Center as well.
Yes.
And some questions and concerns that she has there. Ms. Tucker, if you can hear us, we will ask Dr. Cooper to contact you as well and discuss your concerns and questions with you and hopefully give you some answers to your questions. All right. So thank you very much. That's all of the public comment that I have been made aware of. Dr. Mentor, are you aware of any others yet?
I have no other emails or texts from anybody in the control area. So I'm going to say no. If anybody is there and thought they submitted something, please do not hesitate to email, submit the public comment on the board app. And if we have to, we will follow up with you immediately after this meeting, but I don't have any more in front of me.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you all for being patient as we go through this with our first time. Hopefully as time goes on and we continue this process virtually, it'll be a little bit smoother. But again, I'll remind everyone again that we specifically have a 3-minute allotment for anyone to speak or make comments or ask questions to the board. So that has been our practice for the 16 years that I've been on the board, and we'll continue to have that at this point in time. Okay. All right. Since there's no further business that I have on the agenda or questions or comments from any members of the board, Hearing none, do I hear a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are adjourned.
Um,